exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that works in us. To him be glory in the church by Christ Jesus to all generations forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you, Gene, for that reading. Before we get into our lesson, I want to make a couple of announcements. I got a bunch of announcements at the end, some really cool announcements at the end too, but I do want to acknowledge our Ladies' Day that we had on Saturday. If you didn't know, we had like 140 ladies here and one baby. Is that what the number was? All right, 140 ladies and one baby, which it's totally awesome. So be sure to high-five Martha after services and tell her a good job on directing that. And then, of course, she had a lot of helpers too that I know she acknowledged, and we'll be posting some pictures of that. But that's a testimony to the hard work and the fact that it is meeting a need. So I appreciate the work that Martha's doing, and I know that you all did too. So be sure to compliment her. And I would say let's give her all a round of applause, but she's not a big fan of that, so we won't do that. But be sure to compliment her and tell her good job on the Ladies' Day, because that was pretty awesome. This morning, I want to start with a question, or maybe it's a statement, and it's a statement that maybe you've said before, and it was, I don't think I could ever do that. You know, sometimes I'll look at what other people are doing. Now, I'm not meaning in envy or things like that, but I'll see maybe some of the good works that people are doing for God, and I think, oh, I wish I could do that. Maybe I wish I could, be this type of a missionary, or I could be that dedicated, or I could be that evangelistic, or I could be that loving or benevolent or kind, something like that. But a lot of times I find myself saying something along the lines of, I don't think I could ever do that. I don't know if that's the right way of thinking, though. And then even sometimes as a church, there's been times that we've thrown out some pretty big ideas. And then it usually comes down to, yeah, that's never going to happen. Ever heard yourself or said something like that? Oh, no one's going to go for that. Or that's not going to happen. Or no, people are too stuck in their ways. That kind of idea, that's not going to happen. The verse that Gene read, though, for us, Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20, is a powerful verse. And I know sometimes, like right now, we're not reading the entire section of it, but even in context, it is a verse that is proving, that is stating that there's a lot within us as a church and as a people that we can do if we just trust that God can do it through us. Ephesians chapter 3 and verse 20 says, Now to him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly, and that's a word that's really hard to translate in Greek. Our translators are trying to make it work because Paul kind of invented a word here. It's like a really big word where he puts together a whole bunch of words to describe how big this is. He says, Now to him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly, that means really, really big, above all that we ask or think, according to the power that works within us. So this morning our lesson is going to be simple, it's going to be direct, and it's going to be applicable to all of us. It's this: you can do amazing things for God. But I think what happens is we stop dreaming big when it comes to doing things for God. We get stuck in a rut. Well, I do my thing, I go to work, I go to church, I go home, and we stop thinking outside the box. We stop dreaming big. We become complacent. And on Wednesday night we've been studying the book of Malachi, and in the book of Malachi, the people were still going to church. They were still offering sacrifice, but it was weak, it was empty, it was pointless because they had just become indifferent and complacent in their life. They needed to start dreaming again about the big things that they could do for God. Previous generations before, Nehemiah had a plan that they could rebuild the wall, and they dreamed big, and they did it. But then they kind of stepped back, got into a rut, and they forgot that God can do amazing things through them and for them. So this morning, real quickly, we're going to look in the book of Genesis, and I want us to do a quick case study of someone who was able to do big things through God, and that is Abraham. If you're new to the Bible, here's where Abraham falls. Way back in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? Genesis 1:1. God gave Adam and Eve that Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve sinned. They leave the garden, and humanity starts to spread and populate on the earth. You have the flood through Noah. Humanity again starts to populate and spread on the earth. And then you have a guy named Abraham who becomes the main character of the Old Testament story from about Genesis chapter 12 onward. Abraham's very important because Abraham is the founder of what would later become the Jewish people. Abraham had a kid named Isaac. Isaac had a kid named Jacob. Jacob had 12 sons. They become 12 tribes. The 12 tribes become the 12 tribes of Israel, and that becomes the Jewish people. So Abraham's a pretty big deal in Scripture. In fact, most of the Old Testament is the story of Abraham and his family. That's why it's important. And Abraham's family is the family that a really big character is going to be born from. Who's his name? Jesus. Jesus comes from that family line. Therefore, the Old Testament tells a lot about his story. Well, in this story of Abraham, we have a lot of good examples for us when it comes to this idea of trusting in God and dreaming big. Throughout the New Testament, there's something about Abraham that's emphasized. It is his faith. Faith is trusting that God can do something for you that you can't do for yourself. That means God can do big things. So let's look at Abraham real quick. Abraham, Genesis chapter 12, we are introduced really to his story here. But in Genesis chapter 12, we find out how Abraham was able to do far more abundantly and exceedingly beyond what he ever thought possible. Let's read. Genesis chapter 12 starts with the story of Abraham in verse 1. It says, "Now the Lord said to Abram," that's Abraham, same guy. "Now the Lord said to Abram, go forth from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house to the land which I will show you, and I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing, and I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse, and in you," talking about his family, "in you all the families of the earth will be blessed." So God comes to Abraham and tells Abraham, I want you to leave everything you've ever known. That's hard to do, right? I mean, how many of us have even like the idea of changing a house, changing a job, trying a new thing, starting a new hobby? Coming to Jesus was a challenge because it was new. God goes to Abraham and tells Abraham, I want you to leave your homeland. I want you to leave everything. Leave it all behind and go, and if you do, I will bless you. And look at verse 4. So Abraham went forth as the Lord had spoken to him. And Lot, his family went with him. Now, just in case you're saying I'm too old for that, look at the last part. He says, "Now Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran." If you didn't know, I had a birthday today. Please don't wish me happy birthday. I don't like getting older. But it's funny because I'm old now, and I'm in this middle part of my life, and I'm having this whole existential crisis about, is this exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, and all of that. And somehow in the back of my mind, I have this idea that, it's supposed to all be set and settled now, okay? All figured out, now I coast to death. That's kind of the idea. But that's not God's plan. God could have a whole new plan for me today, tomorrow, next year that I'm supposed to embark on. Abraham was 75 years old when he went off and changed the course of God's people for all eternity, and, the Messiah was going to come from him. He tried new things, and God blessed him because of it. So point number 1 for us this morning, if you want to do big things for God, first and foremost, start doing something new. Get out of the rut. Change your schedule. Change your routine. Do something different. And it's really neat. Even in a mental sense, just trying something new over here will help you try new things over there. Starting a new path, starting a new routine, setting a new goal and trying to reach that goal will change your outlook on the future, especially when it comes to spiritual things. Try new things. Start going to a new class, start a Bible study, start a small group, get involved, start a ministry, give, volunteer, do something different. Get out of the rut. Try new things. Abraham did, and the Lord blessed him. In fact, look at verse 3. I will bless those who bless you, and the ones who curse you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. Your ministry that you're starting today might be the next ministry that blesses the entire globe. That's how powerful God is. So number 1, try new things. But don't just start with that, or don't just stop with that. There's more to it than just, all right, I'm trying something new. God's going to do big things for me. Notice what Abraham did wherever he went. Now, I have a lot of verses there on the screen. I'll read a couple of them. Chapter 12, verse 7. And the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your descendants I will give this land. So he built an altar there to the Lord who appeared to him. Chapter 13, verse 4. To the place of the altar which he had made there formerly, and there Abram called upon the name of the Lord. Let's go on, verse 18 of chapter 13. He says, then Abraham moved his tent and came and dwelt by the oaks of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and there he built an altar to the Lord. And by the way, the next other verses say the same kind of thing. Wherever Abraham went, he worshiped. He spent time with God. So as he's embarking on all these new journeys, all along the way, he would stop and he would build an altar, because that's how they worshiped back then, sacrifice and so on, and he would offer to God. First and foremost in his life was a spiritual priority. We make big plans and then we go about them without God. God was so intertwined into everything that he was doing that there was no separation between Abraham time and spiritual time, goal time and worship time. They were his life. It was intertwined into every moment of it. And everywhere he went, he was building an altar, worshiping God. What's the lesson for us? If you want to do big things for God, spend time with God. Don't just compartmentalize it either. Make it just permeate your entire existence, that you're always worshiping, you're always praying, you're always meditating on his word, you're always studying it, you're always growing in the faith, you're always talking to him. That's the life of one who's going to do great things for God. We have a tendency to just put it in a little box. All right, check it off. I did a prayer today. No, just have it be part of your existence. It is what you do. It is your identity. Abraham's identity was spending time with God. And God was able to do big things through him because he did that. Don't just turn God into something on a calendar where you just, all right, I did my spiritual time for today. Make it part of your existence. It is who you are. It is your identity. Let's keep going. Abraham, though, not only tried new things and not only spent time with God, Abraham was also committed. Now look at chapter 17. Now I don't want to get into too much detail about this because, well, it's an uncomfortable preaching topic. But Abraham was asked to be very committed and had to engage in a certain physical behavior called circumcision and all of that as a way to show this covenant relationship. I know it's weird. I get it. But Abraham did it. God called on Abraham to be committed. And again, oh, by the way, chapter 17, verse 1. Just in case you think, well, I'm too old. Abraham was younger than me, 75. Now when Abraham was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and, well, told him how about this covenant that he was going to make with him and how his descendants were going to take the land of Canaan and all of that. 99 years old. Well, by then he should at least be able to coast on to death, right? I mean, come on. No. 99 years old. All right, Abraham, I got a new job for you. And it's going to be a doozy. Read ahead in chapter 17. You can find out what all that entailed. But Abraham did it. Okay? He did it. We've all been asked to do uncomfortable things. He's 99 years old and got asked to do a really uncomfortable thing. Okay? And he did it. He was committed. You want to do great things for God? Be committed. Like 100%, go all in. This life is short compared to eternity. God says, all right, I give you 100 years here in this life versus 1 billion in eternity. Just go all in for this short amount of time and you'll be good to go. You know, we do this with other things, right? We will commit to something just to get to the final conclusion because we know something better is at the end, right? We will suffer. We will endure hardship. We'll get up early. We'll stay up late. We'll go without eating. We'll go without free time. We'll do different things when we're committed to a cause. We have a short window in this life. And God says, I just want your all. Give me your all for a tiny bit. Just a tiny bit of your existence. And then you got eternity with me. Be committed and you can do great things for God. Abraham was. Everywhere he went, he was committed. How committed are we? I know that I struggle with this. I'm committed to Cliff. I'm committed to my schedule. I'm committed to my money. I'm committed to my time. I'm committed to my hobbies. I'm committed to what I want to do. And yet, God is saying, look, just put off the self just for a little while and be committed to me. And then finally this morning, we notice with Abraham that he lived a life of sacrifice. Now, we already talked about that he made an altar wherever he went, and he would sacrifice. And then in chapter 22, we have probably the most well-known story of Abraham. It's where God kind of challenges him and says, offer your son Isaac. which there's a lot we could talk about with this. One, God never approved of human sacrifice because that was like things that the Babylonians did. So maybe this was kind of just Abraham knew it was a test or something like that. Maybe it was the idea that Abraham knew that Isaac was a child of promise, so there's no way that Isaac or that God would let Isaac die. I mean, there's a lot of things we could discuss with that. But Abraham was willing to sacrifice what was most precious to him because he trusted in God. And obviously here God delivered, and Isaac didn't die, and Abraham was blessed because of his willingness to do that. Application to us, all the questions aside, application to us. Are we willing to give up what we value the most for God? Are we willing to sacrifice it? Say, it's not about me, God, it's about you. I'm willing to give up my time, I'm willing to give up my comfort, I'm willing to give up my routine. Us as individuals and even us as churches. I mean, you try to change a church thing every once in a while. You got like World War III if we change a service time because, well, that's not what I'm used to, God. Abraham was willing to sacrifice what was most important to him in order to do great things for God. And throughout his life, he lived this life of sacrifice. On Wednesday night, you guys should come on Wednesday night, by the way, if you don't. On Wednesday night, we're doing a Bible study of the Minor Prophets at 7 o'clock in the fellowship hall. We're going through the book of Malachi right now. And in the book of Malachi, man, God gets after them for their sacrifices because they were not giving him things that were good. They were giving him leftovers. They were giving him the lame, which we offer. I had a whole word play on our lame sacrifices we offer God. But they were giving God less than their best. And it's not just about worship, it's about life. It's about, are you giving a life to God where you say, God, I'm going to give you my all. I'm going to give you my best. So the application then for us this morning, I told you it would be quick and it would be direct. The application is this. You can do amazing things for God. You can. But it's not going to be you that does them. God can do amazing things through you in the same way he did amazing things through Abraham. If we act like Abraham. If we try new things, if we worship and trust and spend time with God wherever we go, if we make sure that we're completely committed and we live a life of sacrifice. If you do those things, God will do great things for you. Oh, it might not be, everybody's going to remember my name for generations. That's not always what God has in mind. It might be that God will do great things for you because you'll help you save that one person. You'll be a light in the life of another individual. You will be that comfort, that hope, that person that someone needs at a certain time in their life. You might not be remembered for generations, but that one person will remember the impact you had on them, and you'll be doing a big thing for them with God through you if you live this life that Abraham did. Ephesians chapter 3 in verse 20 says, "Now to him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that works in us." We can accomplish great things for God. We just have to stop trusting in self, start trusting in him, and follow the example of those people that were committed before us, people like Abraham. I don't know what big things God has planned for you. I don't know if it's going to be something that anybody will ever even know about. But I do know that God has work for all of us to do. And we need to get out of our comfort zone, and we need to do it. The lesson is yours this morning. If you're here and you need the prayers of the congregation, we'll pray with you. If you need to get plugged into a Bible study, talk to one of us afterwards. But there was a song that was selected. Let's all stand and let's sing it together.